What if everything we know about human history is wrong? What if the first chapter of civilization wasn't written in Mesopotamia or Egypt, but was instead erased from existence in a single catastrophic day over 12,000 years ago? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most controversial theories in archaeology and ancient history. A theory that suggests our ancestors weren't primitive hunter-gatherers struggling to survive in ice-covered wastelands, but rather members of advanced societies with knowledge that rivals our own. Societies that built monuments we can't replicate today, understood celestial mechanics we're only beginning to grasp, and developed technologies that vanished without a trace when the earth itself turned against them. Before you dismiss this as fantasy, consider this. Every major culture on earth tells the same story. A great flood that destroyed the world. Advanced beings who brought knowledge to survivors. Lost golden ages that ended in catastrophe. These aren't just myths or religious allegories. They might be the only surviving memories of humanity's true origin story. So grab something warm to drink, settle in somewhere comfortable, and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about the past. Because tonight, we're exploring evidence that suggests civilization didn't begin 6,000 years ago. It ended. And what came after was humanity starting over from scratch, carrying only fragments of what once was. The year is 10,950 BC. The last ice age is finally releasing its grip on the planet. Massive glaciers that have covered continents for millennia are retreating northward, revealing fertile lands that haven't seen sunlight for thousands of years. Sea levels are rising as ancient ice sheets melt, but slowly, predictably, giving life time to adapt and migrate. Across this transforming world, human settlements flourish in ways that orthodox archaeology insists were impossible. Along coastlines now buried beneath hundreds of feet of ocean water, cities rise with precision-cut stone blocks weighing dozens of tons. Astronomers track celestial movements with mathematical accuracy that won't be seen again for thousands of years. Engineers construct monuments aligned to stellar configurations with tolerances measured in fractions of degrees. These aren't the primitive camps of nomadic hunters that textbooks describe. These are the works of minds that understood principles we're only rediscovering today. Minds that mapped the precession of the equinoxes, calculated the exact diameter of the Earth, and built structures that would survive whatever catastrophe was coming. Because something was coming. Something that would reset human civilization and force the survivors to begin again with nothing but stories and half-remembered knowledge. The evidence for this lost world doesn't come from a single dramatic discovery. Instead, it emerges from dozens of puzzling anomalies scattered across the globe. Structures that appear far older than they should be. Technologies that seem impossibly advanced for their supposed time period. Geological markers that point to a sudden, violent disruption of the natural order. Consider the megaliths of Göbekli Tepe in modern Turkey. Carbon dating places these massive stone circles at nearly 12,000 years old, making them older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than any other known temple complex on Earth. The precision of the carving, the astronomical alignments, the sheer scale of the undertaking, all point to a level of organization and knowledge that shouldn't have existed among small bands of hunter-gatherers. Yet, orthodox archaeology insists that's exactly what built it. Nomadic groups with stone tools and no written language somehow quarried, transported, and erected stones weighing up to 50 tons, then decorated them with intricate reliefs of animals and symbols whose meanings we still can't fully decode. They did this not once, but repeatedly, across multiple sites spanning decades or centuries of construction. The official explanation requires us to believe that human beings made an unprecedented leap in capability, then immediately forgot how to replicate their achievements, that they developed advanced planning, engineering, and artistic skills overnight, used them to build a handful of monuments, then abandoned these abilities and returned to a simpler way of life for thousands of years. But what if the builders of Göbekli Tepe weren't primitive nomads at all? What if they were survivors of something much more advanced, using whatever skills they could remember to preserve their knowledge in stone before it was lost forever? The astronomical alignments carved into these ancient pillars tell a story that mainstream archaeology struggles to explain. Computer analysis of the star patterns depicted on what researchers call the vulture stone reveals a precise match to the constellation positions of 10,950 BC. Not approximate, precise. The kind of accuracy that requires not just casual sky watching, but systematic astronomical observations spanning generations. More disturbing is what the stone appears to record. Among the carved animals and symbols, researchers have identified what may be the oldest known depiction of a comet impact, a circular object held in the claws of a bird surrounded by imagery that suggests catastrophe and destruction. If this interpretation is correct, then Göbekli Tepe isn't just a temple. It's a warning, a message carved in stone by people who witnessed something so devastating that they felt compelled to record it for future generations. The timing is crucial. The date encoded in the vulture stone corresponds exactly to the beginning of the Younger Dryas period, a sudden return to Ice Age conditions that interrupted the planet's gradual warming. For over 1,000 years, temperatures plummeted, glaciers advanced, and much of the northern hemisphere returned to near glacial conditions. Then, just as suddenly, the cold ended, and the modern climate began. Orthodox science explains this as a natural fluctuation in ocean currents. Fresh water from melting glaciers disrupted the circulation patterns that carry warm water northward, causing regional cooling that lasted until the system rebalanced itself. It's a neat explanation that fits with our understanding of climate systems, but it doesn't explain the physical evidence found in sediment layers from around the world. Microscopic diamonds that only form under extreme heat and pressure, unusual concentrations of elements more common in meteorites than on Earth's surface, layers of soot and ash that suggest massive simultaneous wildfires across multiple continents. These markers point to something far more dramatic than gradual climate change. They suggest a cosmic collision that released energy equivalent to millions of nuclear weapons, instantly igniting forests across vast regions and throwing enough debris into the atmosphere to block sunlight for years. The kind of event that could transform a thriving world into a frozen wasteland overnight. The impact hypothesis remains controversial because it challenges fundamental assumptions about how human history unfolded. If a comet or asteroid really did strike the Earth 12,800 years ago, and if advanced civilizations really did exist before that impact, then everything we think we know about the development of human society needs to be reconsidered. The resistance isn't just academic stubbornness. The implications are staggering. If humanity achieved high civilization once before and lost it all in a single catastrophic event, what does that say about the stability of our current achievements? What does it suggest about cycles of rise and fall that might extend far beyond our recorded history? These questions become more pressing when we examine what happened to the planet's megafauna during this same period. For hundreds of thousands of years, the Earth was home to giants. Woolly mammoths roamed the northern steppes in vast herds. Giant ground sloths browsed in American forests. Cave lions hunted across European plains. These creatures had survived multiple ice ages and climate fluctuations, adapting and thriving through environmental changes that lasted tens of thousands of years. Then, in the space of a few centuries, most of them vanished. Not gradually, as climate change theory would suggest, but rapidly, as if some sudden catastrophe had disrupted ecosystems across the entire planet. The fossil record shows a sharp boundary where species that had dominated for millennia simply disappeared, leaving behind only their bones and the mystery of what could have killed them so quickly. The frozen mammoth carcasses found in Siberian permafrost tell an even stranger story. Some of these animals were preserved so perfectly that their flesh remained edible after thousands of years. More puzzling, several were found with undigested food still in their mouths and stomachs, as if they had been flash frozen while eating. The preservation is so complete that scientists have recovered intact DNA and are seriously considering cloning projects. This level of preservation suggests that whatever killed these animals happened very quickly. Quick enough that decomposition never began. Quick enough that the normal processes of decay were interrupted by immediate, intense freezing, the kind of rapid temperature drop that might accompany a sudden shift in the planet's climate system. If massive animals that had survived every previous climate change could be wiped out so quickly, what chance would human settlements have had against the same catastrophe? And if some humans did survive, what would they have faced in the aftermath? The survivors would have emerged into a world transformed beyond recognition. Coastlines where their cities once stood would lie beneath rising seas. Familiar landscapes would be buried under advancing glaciers or stripped bare by massive floods. The infrastructure of civilization, from roads to harbors to agricultural systems, would have been destroyed or rendered useless. Most devastating of all would have been the loss of knowledge. In a world without writing systems, information was preserved in human memory and passed down through oral tradition. When populations crashed and communities scattered, much of that accumulated wisdom would have died with its keepers. Technical skills that took generations to develop would have been lost in a matter of years. The few groups that managed to survive would have faced an impossible choice: They could attempt to preserve their advanced knowledge and risk starvation while trying to maintain complex technologies in a hostile environment. Or they could abandon their sophisticated understanding and focus entirely on basic survival, hunting and gathering in small bands that could move quickly and adapt to changing conditions. Most chose survival, but some may have chosen preservation. And those choices echo through history in ways we're only beginning to understand. The question isn't whether human beings were capable of developing advanced civilization 12,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence proves they were building complex structures, tracking astronomical movements, and organizing large-scale projects long before the supposed dawn of history. The question is, what happened to that capability, and why humanity seemed to start over from scratch just as the Ice Age ended? Traditional archaeology offers gradual explanations, slow development of farming techniques, steady population growth leading to urbanization, incremental advances in technology and social organization, a linear progression from simple to complex that unfolds over thousands of years. But the evidence suggests something far more dramatic. A world where advanced knowledge existed, then vanished, leaving only fragments embedded in monuments designed to survive whatever catastrophe was coming. A reset so complete that it took humanity millennia to rediscover principles that had once been common knowledge. And if such a reset happened once, who's to say it couldn't happen again? The clues to this forgotten world don't just lie buried in ancient stone circles or frozen in Siberian ice. They rest beneath the waves, hidden on sea floors that were once dry land when the oceans stood 400 feet lower than they do today. During the height of the last ice age, vast continental shelves that now lie underwater were home to rivers, forests, and quite possibly the cities of our lost ancestors. When those ice sheets melted, they didn't just raise sea levels gradually. The process was violent, chaotic, marked by catastrophic flood events that could have drowned entire civilizations in a matter of days. Lake Missoula in North America, for example, was a glacial lake larger than Lake Erie and Lake Ontario combined. When the ice dam containing it finally gave way, it released water equivalent to 10 times the flow of all the world's rivers combined. The resulting flood carved out the Columbia River Gorge and scoured the landscape clean across thousands of square miles. Now imagine similar events happening simultaneously across the globe as ice dams failed, glacial lakes burst, and meltwater torrents swept away everything in their path. The survivors of such floods wouldn't just have lost their homes, they would have lost entire landscapes, along with any evidence that advanced societies had ever existed there. This is where the underwater archaeology becomes crucial, because if sophisticated civilizations really did flourish along Ice Age coastlines, their ruins should still be down there, preserved beneath the sediment of the ocean floor. And increasingly, that's exactly what we're finding. Off the coast of India, marine archaeologists have discovered submerged structures near the ancient port city of Dwarka. Carbon dating suggests some of these underwater ruins could be 9,000 years old, placing them in the immediate aftermath of the Ice Age catastrophe. The site includes massive stone blocks arranged in geometric patterns, harbor installations, and what appear to be the foundations of substantial buildings. Local traditions speak of 7 magnificent temples that once stood here, 6 of which were claimed by the sea. Even more intriguing are the discoveries off Japan's Yonaguni Island. Here, at depths of up to 100 feet, divers have found what can only be described as a massive stone complex. Geometric terraces, right-angled cuts, apparent stairways and platforms stretch across an area larger than several football fields. The precision of the angles, the scale of the construction, and the sophistication of the design challenge every assumption about what prehistoric humans were capable of achieving. Skeptics argue these formations are natural, created by geological processes rather than human hands. They point to similar rock formations elsewhere that were clearly carved by erosion and tectonic activity. But the Yonaguni Monument displays features that are difficult to explain through natural processes alone. Tool marks that appear deliberately made, drainage channels that seem engineered, structural elements that look suspiciously like architectural features. More importantly, if the monument is artificial, its age becomes staggering. The last time this area was above sea level was during the Ice Age, more than 12,000 years ago. That would make it older than any known civilization, older than agriculture, older than writing, older than everything we associate with human advancement. Similar discoveries are emerging from underwater sites around the world. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar surveys have revealed what appear to be geometric stone structures at depths of over 2,000 feet. Near the Bahamas, the famous Bimini Road stretches for nearly half a mile underwater, its massive rectangular blocks arranged with a precision that seems too regular to be coincidental. In the Mediterranean, divers have found submerged settlements that predate known Bronze Age cultures by thousands of years. Each discovery on its own might be dismissed as geological coincidence or misinterpretation, but taken together, they paint a picture of widespread coastal development during the Ice Age, followed by submersion as sea levels rose. The question isn't whether these sites exist. The question is what they represent and why so many appear to share similar construction techniques and astronomical alignments. The astronomical connections are perhaps the most puzzling aspect of all. From Göbekli Tepe to the underwater monuments, from the pyramids of Egypt to the temples of the Maya, ancient structures display an obsession with tracking celestial movements. Not just the obvious cycles like the daily path of the sun, but subtle, long-term phenomena that require generations of careful observation to detect. The precession of the equinoxes is one such phenomenon. Due to a slight wobble in Earth's rotation, the position of the stars slowly shifts over a cycle of roughly 26,000 years. It's an almost imperceptible change that accumulates over centuries, causing the constellation visible at dawn on the spring equinox to gradually drift around the zodiac. Ancient astronomers somehow detected this movement and encoded it into their monuments. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for instance, was built with such precision that its sides align to the cardinal directions within a margin of error smaller than the width of a human thumb. Its internal passages point to specific stars, but not to where those stars appear today. Instead, They align to where those same stars appeared in the sky over 12,000 years ago, during the height of the last ice age. This astronomical backdating appears in sites around the world. The Sphinx at Giza faces due east, where it would have watched the constellation Leo rise at dawn during the age of Leo, approximately 10,500 years before the present. The temples of Angkor Wat in Cambodia are arranged to mirror the constellation Draco as it appeared in 10,500 BC. Even Stonehenge, despite being built in multiple phases over centuries, maintains alignments that point back to this same remote period. Why would ancient builders consistently orient their most important structures to star patterns from an era thousands of years before their own time? Orthodox archaeology suggests these alignments are coincidental, or that ancient astronomers were simply honoring traditional star positions. But another explanation presents itself. These monuments were built by people who possessed direct knowledge of that earlier era, knowledge that had been passed down through an unbroken chain of tradition from the survivors of the Ice Age catastrophe. Knowledge that was slowly being lost as generations passed and memories faded, leading to increasingly desperate efforts to preserve it in permanent form before it disappeared entirely. The mathematical sophistication required for these astronomical calculations shouldn't have existed in the ancient world. The precession cycle takes 26,000 years to complete. Detecting it requires not just careful observation, but the ability to recognize patterns that span far longer than any individual lifetime. It demands mathematical concepts like angular measurement, geometric proportion, and predictive modeling that supposedly weren't developed until classical Greek civilization. Yet somehow, builders across the ancient world possessed this knowledge. They understood that the earth was round and calculated its circumference with remarkable accuracy. They tracked the movements of planets with precision that rivaled Renaissance astronomy. They built monuments whose proportions encoded advanced mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio. This knowledge didn't develop gradually. It appears suddenly, fully formed, in the earliest civilizations we recognize. Sumerian mathematics emerged with place value notation and geometric principles already intact. Egyptian engineering displayed mastery of complex calculations from the very first pyramids. There is no evidence of a learning curve, no gradual development from simple to sophisticated. Instead, it's as if these civilizations inherited their advanced knowledge from an earlier source, as if they were working from instruction manuals, rather than developing techniques through trial and error, as if they were the inheritors of wisdom rather than its originators. The flood myths that appear in cultures worldwide take on new significance in this context. These aren't just stories about divine punishment or natural disasters. They're memories of the event that ended the first chapter of human civilization. The survivors who emerge from these floods aren't random refugees. They're the keepers of knowledge, the teachers who help scattered groups rebuild from the ruins of what came before. In Mesopotamian tradition, the flood survivor Utnapishtim possesses wisdom that he shares with heroes like Gilgamesh. In Hindu mythology, Manu receives instruction from divine beings who guide humanity through the catastrophe. In Greek legend, Deucalion and Pyrrha repopulate the earth after the deluge, carrying forward the seeds of civilization. These figures aren't gods in the supernatural sense. They're human survivors of an advanced culture, preserving what they can of their lost world and sharing it with the scattered bands of hunter-gatherers who inherited the devastated planet. Their knowledge seems miraculous to people who have forgotten what humanity once achieved, leading to their elevation in myth and legend. The pattern repeats across cultures that had no contact with each other. Advanced beings arrive after catastrophic floods, bringing knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, mathematics, and construction techniques. They establish new settlements, teach survival skills, and then fade into legend as their direct influence diminishes and their teachings become ritualized tradition. This explains why so many ancient cultures attribute their foundational knowledge to divine teachers rather than claiming to have developed it themselves. The Egyptians credited Thoth with bringing writing and mathematics. The Sumerians honored Enki as the giver of wisdom and civilization. The Maya revered Kukulkan as the bringer of knowledge after the destruction of previous worlds. These weren't supernatural entities. They were the last representatives of humanity's first attempt at advanced civilization, working desperately to ensure that at least some of their accumulated knowledge would survive the dark age that followed the catastrophe. But why didn't they simply rebuild their lost civilization directly? Why settle for teaching basic skills to scattered survivors instead of reconstructing the sophisticated society they had known? The answer lies in the scale of the devastation. The Ice Age catastrophe didn't just destroy cities and kill populations. It fundamentally altered the planet's environment. Familiar coastlines vanished beneath rising seas. Stable climate patterns shifted into chaotic fluctuations. The infrastructure that had supported advanced civilization, from trade routes to agricultural systems, was swept away or rendered useless. In such conditions, survival required adaptability above all else. Small mobile groups that could hunt, gather, and migrate as conditions changed stood a better chance than large settled populations that depended on complex supply chains and specialized knowledge. The very advantages that had made advanced civilization possible became liabilities in a world where the rules had suddenly changed. The survivors faced an agonizing choice. They could attempt to maintain their sophisticated understanding while struggling to survive in a hostile environment, risking the loss of everything if their small communities failed. Or they could focus on immediate survival, passing on only the most essential knowledge while allowing more complex understanding to fade away. Most chose survival. But they didn't abandon their knowledge entirely. Instead, they encoded it into stories, rituals, and monuments designed to preserve essential information in forms that could survive, even if the civilizations that created them did not. The result was a kind of time capsule civilization, where advanced knowledge was deliberately embedded in seemingly primitive cultural forms. Star maps became constellation myths. Mathematical principles became sacred geometries. Engineering techniques became religious rituals. The wisdom of an advanced age was disguised as the superstitions of a primitive one, waiting for humanity to develop enough to recognize what had been hidden in plain sight. This explains the sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in early civilizations. It wasn't developed from scratch by primitive peoples. It was recovered from the cultural time capsules left by their predecessors, decoded by societies that had finally developed enough to understand what they had inherited. The evidence for this systematic preservation of knowledge appears in the strangest places, hidden within traditions that orthodox archaeology dismisses as primitive folklore. Take the Aboriginal Australians, whose oral traditions stretch back over 40,000 years, making them the longest continuous cultural memory on Earth. These aren't simple creation myths or moral tales. They're detailed geographical descriptions that include references to coastlines, rivers, and landmarks that were submerged by rising seas at the end of the Ice Age. When researchers compared these ancient stories with modern bathymetric maps of the Australian coast, they found precise correlations. The Aboriginal accounts described land bridges, freshwater springs, and hunting grounds that existed exactly where underwater archaeology has now confirmed them. These traditions preserved accurate geographical information for over 10,000 years, passed down through hundreds of generations without the aid of writing. But the Aboriginal stories contain more than just geographical data. Embedded within their Dreamtime narratives are sophisticated astronomical observations, tracking the movements of stars and planets with mathematical precision. The Wardaman people described the path of the sun through the sky using geometric concepts that weren't supposed to exist until classical Greek mathematics. The Yolngu people encode lunar cycles and tidal patterns into their ceremonial paintings with an accuracy that rivals modern scientific charts. This isn't coincidental. It's evidence of a deliberate system designed to preserve crucial information across vast spans of time. The stories weren't just entertainment or spiritual guidance. They were textbooks, disguised as mythology, to ensure their survival through whatever catastrophes might come. Similar patterns emerge when we examine other indigenous traditions around the world. The Dogon people of Mali possess detailed knowledge about the star Sirius that includes information about its companion star, Sirius B, which wasn't discovered by Western astronomy until the invention of powerful telescopes. Their traditions describe the orbital period of this invisible star with remarkable accuracy, along with other astronomical data that shouldn't have been accessible to naked eye observation. The Hopi people of North America maintain prophecies that describe previous worlds destroyed by fire and flood, followed by periods of rebuilding that match the geological timeline of the Ice Age catastrophe. Their traditions speak of survivors who carried sacred knowledge from the destroyed worlds, teaching the skills needed to survive in the new environment. These aren't isolated examples. Indigenous cultures across 6 continents preserve similar accounts of global catastrophe, followed by the arrival of knowledge-bearing teachers. The consistency of these traditions despite the geographical separation of the cultures that maintain them, suggests they're drawing from a common historical source rather than independent mythological development. The knowledge encoded in these traditions goes far beyond basic survival skills. Hidden within ceremonial practices, architectural layouts, and seasonal rituals are mathematical principles, engineering techniques, and scientific observations that demonstrate a level of understanding supposedly impossible for prehistoric peoples. The Inca, for instance, built structures using a technique called ashlar masonry, where massive stone blocks are cut and fitted together so precisely that not even a knife blade can slide between them. The stones aren't held together with mortar, yet the walls have survived earthquakes that toppled modern buildings. The engineering principles required for this construction involve complex calculations of stress distribution, seismic resistance, and material properties that weren't formally understood until the 20th century. Yet, the Inca claimed they didn't invent these techniques. Their own legends state that the knowledge came from earlier peoples, the builders of previous ages who possessed wisdom that the Inca themselves only partially understood. They were caretakers of inherited knowledge rather than its originators, preserving what they could while admitting that much had already been lost. This pattern of inherited rather than invented knowledge appears throughout the ancient world. The Maya developed a calendar system more accurate than the one we use today, tracking celestial cycles with precision that required centuries of systematic observation. Yet their own creation myths describe this knowledge as being given to them by divine teachers who appeared after the destruction of previous worlds. The Egyptians built the Great Pyramid with internal passages aligned to specific stars, demonstrating understanding of precession cycles that take 26,000 years to complete. But Egyptian texts attribute this wisdom to the Neteru, the divine beings who ruled before human pharaohs and who possessed knowledge that exceeded normal human capabilities. Even the Sumerians, credited as the inventors of writing and urban civilization, described their knowledge as coming from the Anunnaki, beings who brought the gifts of civilization after a great flood had destroyed the previous world. The Sumerian king lists speak of rulers who reigned for impossibly long periods before the flood, suggesting either symbolic rather than literal interpretation or records of a very different kind of human society. The mathematical knowledge embedded in these ancient traditions is particularly striking. The builders of Stonehenge encoded the dimensions of the earth and moon into their stone circle, using a unit of measurement based on the planet's circumference. The designers of the Giza Pyramid Complex built mathematical relationships into their monuments that incorporate pi, the golden ratio, and the speed of light expressed in ancient units. These constants weren't discovered by ancient peoples through primitive observation. They were preserved from an earlier age when humanity possessed scientific instruments capable of making such precise measurements. The monuments serve as three-dimensional libraries, storing information in geometric form that could survive even if the civilization that created them did not. The astronomical alignments found in ancient sites take on new significance when viewed as preservation systems rather than religious symbolism. The megalithic sites of Europe, from Stonehenge to Karnak to Newgrange, form an interconnected network of astronomical computers, each one designed to track different aspects of celestial movement. Together, they preserve a complete picture of Earth's relationship to the cosmos, encoded in stone that could last for millennia. The precision required for these calculations defies conventional explanations. The builders of these monuments understood that the Earth's rotation is gradually slowing, that the moon's orbit is slowly expanding, and that the planet's axis undergoes complex wobbling motions that affect the apparent position of stars. They incorporated these subtle changes into their designs, creating monuments that remained astronomically accurate across thousands of years. This level of sophistication requires not just mathematical knowledge, but also the technological capability to make precise measurements and the institutional stability to maintain observations across centuries. Yet, Orthodox archaeology insists these monuments were built by scattered tribes of hunter-gatherers using nothing more than stone tools and wooden posts. The alternative explanation is that these sites represent the remnants of a much more advanced civilization, one that possessed scientific instruments, mathematical understanding, and technological capabilities that we're only beginning to appreciate. A civilization that saw the cosmic catastrophe coming and made desperate preparations to preserve their knowledge for future generations. The evidence for this preparation appears in the deliberate redundancy built into ancient monuments. The same astronomical information appears encoded in multiple sites across vast distances, as if the builders were creating backup copies of crucial data. The mathematical constants are repeated in different forms, using various units of measurement and geometric arrangements to ensure the information could be recovered even if some of the monuments were destroyed. This systematic preservation effort suggests the builders knew their world was ending. They understood that the cosmic cycles they had been tracking were approaching a catastrophic convergence, and they used their remaining time to create permanent records that could guide the survivors through the dark age that would follow. The placement of these monuments also reveals strategic thinking. They're positioned on high ground, away from coastlines that would be affected by rising seas. They're built using the most durable materials available, designed to withstand earthquakes, floods, and the gradual erosion of time. They're located near resources that survivors would need: fresh water, fertile soil, and defensible positions. Most importantly, they're designed to be recognizable as artificial constructions even after thousands of years of abandonment. The geometric precision, the astronomical alignments, and the sheer scale of the undertakings all serve as signals to future civilizations that these sites contain important information. They're beacons across time, calling attention to themselves and inviting investigation by any culture advanced enough to understand their significance. The builders weren't just preserving knowledge for their immediate survivors. They were creating messages for the distant future, for the time when humanity would once again develop the capability to decode what had been hidden. They understood that civilization moves in cycles, that knowledge can be lost and rediscovered, and that the survivors of one catastrophe might face similar challenges in ages to come. This cyclical view of history appears in the traditions of cultures worldwide. The Hindu concept of yugas describes repeating ages of rise and decline, with each cycle ending in destruction before beginning anew. The Maya spoke of multiple previous creations, each destroyed in turn before the current world began. The Norse described Ragnarok as a cyclical ending that would be followed by renewal and rebirth. These aren't just mythological concepts. They're historical memories preserved in symbolic form, describing the actual pattern of human civilization as it rises, falls, and rises again. The catastrophe that ended the Ice Age wasn't unique. It was simply the most recent in a series of cosmic events that periodically reset human development, forcing each successive civilization to rebuild from the fragments left by its predecessors. The physical evidence for these earlier cycles remains largely hidden, buried beneath sediment, ice, and rising seas. But the knowledge systems survive, passed down through oral traditions, encoded in monuments, and embedded in the foundational myths of every culture on Earth. Each tradition preserves different pieces of the puzzle, different aspects of the lost world that once flourished before the sky fell and the waters rose. The question isn't whether advanced civilization existed before the Ice Age catastrophe. The evidence for that is overwhelming, scattered across every continent and preserved in traditions spanning thousands of years. The question is how many times this cycle has repeated, how many previous attempts at human advancement have been erased by cosmic catastrophes, and whether we're wise enough to recognize the warnings left by our predecessors. Because if the ancient knowledge keepers were right about cycles of destruction and renewal, then our current civilization isn't the culmination of human progress. It's simply the latest attempt, built on foundations we don't fully understand, carrying forward fragments of wisdom whose origins we've forgotten. And if they were right about the cyclical nature of cosmic catastrophes, then the next reset isn't a matter of if, but when. Of if, but when. The warning signs that our predecessors encoded in stone aren't just abstract astronomical data or mathematical constants. They're specific alerts about the cosmic neighborhood we inhabit, a region of space that periodically becomes a shooting gallery of debris from fragmenting comets and asteroid swarms. Modern astronomy has identified what researchers call the Taurid meteor stream, a vast cloud of cosmic debris that Earth encounters twice each year. Most of the time, this produces nothing more dramatic than seasonal meteor showers, brief streaks of light as small particles burn up in our atmosphere. But embedded within this stream are much larger objects, kilometer-wide fragments of ancient comets that pose a genuine threat to planetary civilization. The orbital mechanics are terrifyingly simple. Every few thousand years, Earth's path through space intersects with the densest regions of this debris field. When that happens, the planet doesn't just encounter a few harmless shooting stars. It runs headlong into a cosmic minefield where impacts become not just possible, but inevitable. The last time this occurred was approximately 12,800 years ago. The next convergence is approaching, though exactly when remains uncertain. The ancient monument builders seem to have understood this cycle, tracking it through careful observation of celestial mechanics and encoding warnings about its return into their most permanent constructions. The Younger Dryas impact wasn't a single asteroid strike. It was a bombardment, a cosmic shotgun blast that peppered the planet with fragments ranging from house-sized boulders to continent-killing behemoths. The atmospheric explosions alone would have been visible from thousands of miles away, appearing as new suns blazing across the sky before detonating with the force of nuclear weapons. The immediate effects would have been catastrophic beyond imagination. Forests across entire continents erupted in flames simultaneously, the atmosphere filled with smoke and debris, blocking sunlight for months or years. Temperatures plummeted as the planet entered what scientists call an impact winter, similar to the nuclear winter scenarios developed during the Cold War. But the long-term consequences were even more devastating. The impact triggered massive instabilities in Earth's ice sheets, causing glacial dams to fail and releasing floods that dwarfed anything in recorded history. Sea levels rose chaotically as ice shelves collapsed, drowning coastlines where millions of people had built their lives. The evidence scattered across our planet tells a story far stranger than any fiction. From the astronomical alignments of Göbekli Tepe to the underwater ruins off forgotten coastlines, from the flash-frozen mammoths of Siberia to the mathematical constants encoded in ancient stone, the fragments all point to the same conclusion. We are not the first. Our current civilization stands on foundations we barely understand, built from the scattered remnants of worlds that came before. The question isn't whether humanity will face another reset, but whether we'll be wise enough to heed the warnings carved in stone by those who witnessed the last one.